Hello, everyone, and welcome you all to another chapter of the Flutter tutorial. So now we are on our chapter number 4, where we'll be learning understanding about the basic about the folder structure in Flutter. So we are going to get some basic understanding about the folder structure. Okay, like once you create a application inside Flutter, it does create a lot of folders. Okay, so we're gonna see that what each folder basically does. We are going to work about all of that. First, I'll be showing you guys about what folders we guys are talking about, and then I will be telling you guys what that particular folder holds, how it's helpful, what are the folders that we need to focus more on, and what are the folders that we will just keep it untouched, like we won't make any changes to it. So let's not waste much time and let's get started. So over here on my screen, as you guys can see, now here I am in the Flutter application. Okay. So if you just click over here, now this is basically the application one. Otherwise, if you do want me to close this project, okay, and here from here now, let's open it up. I will be opening up the same thing. So the folders we guys will be talking about over here, it is basically the folders on the left hand side. Okay. So under this particular folder, I do have this dot underscore tool file. I do have the dot idea. So each of these folder basically holds different kind of information, because all these folders are basically not just only for show. And out of these folders, some of the folders we are going to use most of our time while actually creating our application. Okay, so there is a lib folder, there is iOS, there is build one. Okay, there is this Android folder. Here we do have git ignore, dot metadata. Okay, and here we also do have that pubspec dot log. We do have the pubspec dot yaml. So we're gonna learn about all of that. So now let's get started. So the first folder about which we guys are going to talk about is the dot idea folder, okay, which is just placed underneath the dart underscore tool file. Okay, so the first feature of this particular file is this particular folder stays at top in the project structure. Okay, so as you guys can see, this dot idea folder basically is on top of the project structure. So the project structure is basically the set of folders. They do call it the project structure, and it always stays on top. Okay, and the idea folder basically holds the whole configuration for the Android Studio. So Android Studio is basically the integrated development environment which we were using to actually do our coding for our application that we are going to build. So it basically holds the whole configuration for the Android Studio, which is quite important. But the main thing is that we are not going to work with this particular folder. Like we will just keep it the way it is. We won't be going there and making any changes manually over there. And also, as we are not working inside that particular folder, the content, whatever content is basically present inside the dot idea folder should be ignored, and we should not make any changes at all. Okay, like if you make any changes, it will just give us some extra headache afterwards. Again, we have to reset and stuff, which is another quite hectic thing for us to do, because as we are getting started with it. Okay, so I will just suggest you guys that just keep it the way it is and don't bother. Okay. And the next folder which we are going to talk about is basically this Android folder. Okay. Which we can also call is at the .android folder in the project panel. So .android, it is used when it builds the Flutter application for Android. Okay. So over here, we are actually building a mobile application for Android and for an iOS. Okay. So over here, this .android folder basically is used when it builds Flutter application for an Android device. Okay, so it is only activated and it is only used when it actually builds a Flutter application for Android. So if you guys have remember when I was actually creating up a new Flutter project, I do have selected that I want to do some coding or I want to build a web application for Android and for iOS. Okay, so now it actually holds the application and also it holds a complete Android project. So for developing an Android project, whatever codes we basically need, it holds all of that inside this particular project. And the whole Flutter code is basically compiled into the native code. Okay, so we have also learned before that what a native code is, what are native features of a particular device. Okay, so the whole Flutter code, whatever code is available, is compiled into the native code, and also it basically gets injected into the Android project. Okay, so it basically gets injected into the Android project, and the outcome is a native Android application. Okay, so the outcome which you'll be receiving is you will be receiving a basic on a native Android application. Okay, so that's what the .android folder basically does. And the next folder which we are going to talk about is the .ios. Okay, so in .android we learned that it holds a complete Android project. Okay, and it is only used when it builds the Flutter application for an Android. So this is just the same thing, but it is for iOS. So it holds a complete Mac project, not a complete Windows or not a complete Android project. Okay. And it is only being used when you are developing a Mac project, and it also builds the Flutter application for iOS. Okay. And Flutter code is actually compiled into the native code. And basically, the result of this is a native iOS application, not a native Android application. And also, it gets injected into the iOS project. And this particular thing, or getting the .ios file compiled and having things inside this, is only possible in if you are creating a Flutter application for iOS and on only when you're working on Mac OS. Okay, so using a Windows application, you guys can't create a Flutter application for iOS. So for creating an iOS application, you only have to use Mac OS. It can be a laptop and it can be a PC, but the OS basically needs to be a Mac OS, not a Windows OS. Okay, so that's what the .ios folder does, holds a complete Mac project, and also it builds applications for iOS. And the next folder, what we're gonna learn is basically the lib. Okay, so here, if you guys take a look, this is where I do have the .ios file. And next thing we are going to learn is the dot lib. Okay. So the full form of dot lib file is basically the library. And this is very important folder. And we are going to make use of this folder most of the time. Okay. So out of the folders which we have seen till now, we are going to use this dot lib file 99% of the time. Okay, because here we do have different kind of libraries for different type of projects. We need to use different kind of libraries as well. Okay, so the first point is that it is a very important folder where we are going to do our project work. Okay, so over here, basically, we are going to do our project work, and it is a very important folder. And as I've told you guys earlier, that .lib stands for library, and inside this particular folder, we will also find the Dart files which store the code of our Flutter application. So basically inside this folder, we are going to find the Dart file, which actually stores the code for the Flutter application that we are building. Okay, so as we already know that once we are creating a Flutter application, we need Dart file. So it will store the Dart file and the code for the application that we are going to run or which we are basically creating. So this particular .lib file, we are going to use it most of the time, and it is present just on top of the test folder. And the next thing we are going to talk about is basically the test folder. Well, the test folder also contains the Dart code, which is written for the Flutter application as well. And also the particular test folder performs the automated test when building the application. So while performing an automated test when building the application, it actually helps a lot. And this particular folder is also not that important as it is automatically been tested. Okay, so it performs automated tests when building the particular app. It basically checks. Okay, so we don't need to make any manual changes into this particular folder as well. Okay, and the next folder which we are going to talk about is dot ignore folder. Okay, so the first thing what we are going to learn about the dot git ignore folder is that it is a text file. Okay, so the type of file it is a text file, and also this particular dot git ignore file contains a list of files, file extension, and a folder. And basically, if I tell you guys in simple word that what a git ignore file uh, have in common is that once you are uploading your application in the GitHub, in that case, this git ignore file will actually compile of the things that it will not upload or it will not show. Okay, like these are the files will not get uploaded and which will get ignored while you try to upload your particular set of application inside GitHub. Okay, so it directs Git to choose which files should be ignored in a set of projects. Okay, so in a particular project, it directs Git to choose that which files it should ignore and which files it should take. So it also plays a very vital role while we work in developing a Flutter application, and the git ignore file is just underneath the test folder. And the next thing we are going to learn about the folder is basically the dot metadata. Okay. So metadata is also an auto-generated file by the Flutter tool. Okay. So the content inside the folder dot metadata is auto-generated, and also it keeps track of the properties of the Flutter project. Okay, so basically it keeps track of all the properties of the Flutter project, and also it performs a lot of internal tasks. Okay, so a particular folder or a particular application have a lot of internal tasks which is needed to be performed. So the dot metadata folder or inside this particular folder, they perform a lot of internal tasks. Okay. But over here, also into the dot metadata file, we don't have to edit whatever content is present inside manually at any time. Okay. So it will just do its own work automatically. Okay, so that is a very good thing that we don't have to put much of our effect here in this particular folder, because I have already told you that 99% of the time we are going to work on with the .lib folder, which is the .library folder. Once we are over here in the project panel, and the next folder we are going to talk about is the pub pubspec.yaml. Okay, so the pubspec.yaml is the project configuration file. Okay, so this is also a very important file that we guys are going to work with, because this particular folder basically contains the project configuration file. Like, what is the configuration of the project that we guys are working on? It consists of that. And also, we are going to use this a lot when working on the Flutter project, as I have already told you, which is the point number 2. And also, it controls on how our application works. Okay, so once we're running our application, the pubspec.yaml file or folder basically controls on how your application works. And a pubspec.yml file contains the name of the project. Okay, so it contains what is the name of the project over here, and also it contains that what is the version and the description of the project. Okay, so if you do have a project open, so over here in the pubspec.yml file, we will be able to see that what is the version and also the description of the project. Okay, and also from this particular folder, we are going to able to see the project dependencies and also the project assets. So assets are like widgets or text files. We will be able to see images over here. Okay, so that's all. And the pubspec.yml file is just underneath the pubspec.log file. Okay, and the next folder we are going to talk about is basically the pubspec.log file, which is right over here. So here we have learned about the pubspec.yml. So as I was telling you guys that most of the time while we are on our Flutter application, we are going to be using the library file, okay, or the library folder, and also the 1% which is left that we are going to use is the pubspec.yml folder. Okay, so basically while creating a application, we are going to use both of these files for manual changes. So the first is .lib, okay, and the other one is pubspec.yaml file. Okay, so Now let's go back at the pubspec.log and let's see its features. So this is also an auto-generated file, or the all the content inside this particular file is auto-generated, and basically it is based on the YAML file. Okay, so this particular pubspec.log file or folder is based on the W or YAML file which is present over there. Okay, and the pubspec.log file contains more detailed setup about all dependencies available. Okay, so it contains a lot more detailed setup about all the dependencies that are present. So yeah, I hope now you guys have got up a basic idea about the folders that we are going to see a lot often once we are building our application. Okay, so over here in detail, we do have learned about the .idea folder. We have learned about the .android folder, what all it contains, how important this is. We have learned about the .ios folder, what are its features, and what does it do for us. Okay, we have learned about that how important the .lib file is, and we are going to use it 99% of the time when we are working with the project panel. And also we have learned about the test folder. We have also learned about the .git ignore folder, about the .metadata folder, and also about the pubspec.yaml, and lastly about the pubspec.lock. So I hope to see you all in the next chapter where we're going to learn more about Flutter and its usage and its working. So see you all in the next chapter. Till then, take care and goodbye everyone.